So, Captain America Brave New World has hit cinemas across the globe, and I saw the movie last night, and I gotta be honest, there's been so much controversy surrounding this film, and there's been so much discussion about, whether it was going to be a, mess of a project and everything like that, and after watching the film coming out last night and having slept on it, I loved Brave New World. I absolutely loved it, and I'm really happy that I did, because I was a champion of this movie from the beginning. I really wanted this movie to succeed. I really hoped it was going to be good. So the fact that I can sit here and talk to you guys and confidently say that I really had a great time with it means a lot to me. But what I want to do in this video is talk about the future of the MCU beyond Brave New World, and specifically what Brave New World sets up for the MCU at large, given the fact that there's quite a few things that are teased in this movie that really gets our minds thinking about what could be happening in the MCU going forward. And of course, full spoilers ahead for Captain America Brave New World. If you've not seen the film yet and you're planning on seeing it, don't watch this video. It's going to be full of spoilers from the movie, so you do not want to hear this if you're still planning on seeing the film. So just to give you a rundown on my thoughts on Brave New World, I'm not typically one for doing reviews these days, but if you would like to see a full spoiler review for Brave New World, let me know in the comments and I'll do that as my next video. But generally, as I said in the beginning, loved Brave New World, had an absolute blast with it. I thought it was just top to bottom really well done. Yeah, the movie, I can see why some people are saying it's a little bit messy and a little bit convoluted. Like, there is quite a bit in this movie, but overall, for me personally, I just fell straight into it, like from the beginning. Sam Wilson definitively is Captain America. I love him in the role. I think he was the perfect choice to take up the mantle. I love the fact that Sam's character in this is so true to his character in the MCU at large. Like, despite the fact that he's now Captain America and he's moved on to these huge ventures, he's still taking time to be there for those around him. He's talking to veterans. He's giving support to his fellow soldiers. And for me, I loved seeing that because it's so true to Sam's character and it's such a big part of who he was when he was introduced back in 2014. I'm glad that that stayed consistent. Also, Harrison Ford as General Ross was absolutely fantastic. Obviously, this is a recast, but he just shows up to work. He's fantastic here, really good. And all the stuff with Red Hulk, I just thought was really fun also. Of course, it's all over the marketing. We all knew Red Hulk was in this movie, but when we finally get to him, it's a blast on screen, like absolutely fantastic. And I just think everything in the movie, when you look at all the characters throughout, I loved this cast. The chemistry between Sam, Joaquin, and particularly Isaiah Bradley, who was such a standout in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, is once again a standout in Brave New World. The action scenes were fantastic. I love the fact that the action scenes were shot in IMAX. It really expanded that screen when those scenes came up. The only thing I will say as a negative for the movie is there is some really dodgy CGI in the final battle. Not enough to bother me personally. Like, I'm not one of these people who just goes off on one about bad CGI in movies. Like, yeah, we are getting some bad CGI these days, but I think generally Brave New World has really good CGI. There's just one scene where it goes really ropey, and I feel like they just didn't have enough time to finish that scene. But it doesn't detract from the movie itself, which for me, I thought was just so much fun. And for me personally, I think this is one of my favourite MCU movies post-Endgame. Probably. But anyway, review aside, let's talk about the future of the MCU. And the first thing I want to talk about is the new Avengers. Now, obviously, the Avengers has kind of been this weird sticking point in the MCU post-Endgame because nobody really knows who the Avengers are anymore. We haven't seen an Avengers movie since Endgame. We haven't seen the Avengers as an established team really since Age of Ultron. Like, when you think about even like Infinity War and Endgame, those movies, despite being Avengers movies and having the Avengers in it, was this big culmination movie of everybody. Like, everyone who was and wasn't an Avenger was in those films. So we haven't really seen a true established Avengers team since 2015. 10 years, that's crazy. And what I think is exciting about this film is President Ross says to Sam, I want you to reform the Avengers. And I guess this is obviously going to be a tease for, Avengers Doomsday, and, over the next couple of years, we're going to see this team hopefully come together. Now, I guess the question is, who will this Avengers team be? Because I think the Avengers now are very, very different to the Avengers then. I think there are a few characters that we can look at that are definitely going to be a part of that team. With Sam leading, we can look at characters like Doctor Strange being fully brought in as a member of the Avengers. I think Captain Marvel is a good shout. I think perhaps whatever they do with Black Panther going forward, they could be a member, whether it's Shuri or if we get like a recast T'Challa, which has been rumored recently. I think those characters are definitely going to come in. Shang-Chi, I also think is a good player. Like, based on the post-credit scene from Shang-Chi, I feel like he already has connections to the Avengers, so they could go down that route. And I also feel like there's the possibility for a couple of OGs to return. Particularly, I think Thor is the main one who will come back. Like, Chris Hemsworth is still playing Thor. He's still around, so he could be brought back into the fold. And I also feel like Bruce Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo, I feel like he could come back in as well. I feel like those two are the main OG Avengers who would come back, because obviously Tony and Natasha are dead. Steve, we don't know what's happened with Steve. I mean, he's obviously an old man now, but we haven't heard anything about him since Endgame. I'm surprised this movie didn't really talk about Steve in regards to where he is now. And then, of course, we have Hawkeye. He's still alive, but based on the Disney Plus series, I kind of feel like he's done now. I don't know. We might see him again in these Avengers movies. You never know. But also with Jeremy Renner's accident, who's to say? But also, I guess the other big question is, when will this team form? Now, I personally would love to see Sam Wilson show up in the next few Marvel projects and recruit characters for that team. Be it if he shows up at the end of Daredevil Born Again on Disney Plus and recruits Matt Murdock, or if he shows up at the end of Fantastic Four once the Fantastic Four have arrived in the 616 universe and he recruits Reed Richards. Like, there's so many ways they could go about it, and I feel like the perfect way of establishing this new Avengers team and getting people excited for it is have Sam Wilson show up in other people's projects and recruit them for this new Avengers team to face this new threat going ahead of them. Next thing, and this is kind of a smaller thing, but this film does establish the Serpents, or what is essentially this film's version of the Serpent Society from the comics. Now, for me, I think that this is potentially them laying the seeds and laying the groundwork for a reappearance of the Serpents in a future project. Specifically, I think this is kind of laying the groundwork for Captain America 5. Now, there's been no announcement of a Captain America 5. We don't know if that's happening, but I would like to see Sam Wilson get his own Captain America trilogy as Steve Rogers did. And I feel like the next logical step for that would be the Serpent Society. Now, obviously, the Serpent Society was originally going to be what Captain America 3 was, or at least it was one of the ideas for Captain America 3, but then they went with Civil War. They could bring that idea back, bring back Giancarlo Esposito's character from Brave New World, Sidewinder, and have that be a primary antagonist for Captain America 5. It's possible. You know, Giancarlo Esposito, he survived this movie. He's not dead. He could definitely come back, and the last conversation he has with Sam is very much a "I'll see you later," really. So I feel like they are definitely going to plan to bring back these characters in some way, shape, or form in a Captain America 5 in probably another 4 or 5 years' time, which is sad to think about, but I guess that's the way it is with the MCU these days. Now, I think the biggest thing introduced in Brave New World that a lot of people are going to be talking about is adamantium, which is, of course, the incredible, versatile metal that gives many things prominence in the MCU, but most importantly in the Marvel Comics, is what Wolverine's claws are made out of. And this is something that obviously a lot of people are going to be talking about. Like, adamantium is now in the MCU. It has come from the Celestial that rose from the Earth at the end of the Eternals, so it's cool that we're finally going back to that. Didn't expect it to be in a Captain America movie, but hey-ho. But the Celestial has raised up, it's caused this arms race across the world, where people are trying to get to the Celestial so they can retrieve this adamantium metal and obviously start applying it to their own countries with their own technology, weapons, whatever it may be. Now, I guess the question for all the comic fans out there, and, you know, us watching this video and watching this movie, is what does this mean for the X-Men? Because that's immediately where our comic fans' brains go. And I think, personally, I don't really know, because the adamantium being introduced into the MCU at this point in time, I feel like is going to be kind of irrelevant going forward, because while yes, adamantium relates heavily to Wolverine, I feel like post-Secret Wars, we're going to get the MCU rebooted, and the X-Men and mutants are going to be a part of the MCU, and it's basically going to put that they always were, which is kind of strange, because obviously the X-Men are such a big part of the Marvel Universe. To kind of just throw them in after Secret Wars and say they've always been here is kind of a cop-out. I mean, I know, like, I can't think off the top of my head of a better way of doing it, but it feels kind of cheap and easy. And I feel like that's the way it's going to go. So I personally can't think of a way in which the adamantium that's introduced in this film is actually going to be used to introduce Wolverine. The only other way I could see it being done is if they change up Wolverine a little bit, which I feel like the MCU is going to do, and they are going to bring in a sort of modern day Wolverine where somebody is going to get their hands on some adamantium and is going to start experimenting on Logan, this soldier, and then they're going to give him the powers that we know of Wolverine, give him the metal skeleton, give him the claws, and then we'll see a modern day Wolverine. That's the only other way I could see it going about it. Now, as I mentioned, I feel like the adamantium being introduced here, it's more of a plot device for this movie and the kind of global politics that this movie is discussing, rather than an idea of what the X-Men and Wolverine could be in the MCU, especially when, as I said before, I feel like Secret Wars or post-Secret Wars, we're going to get a rebooted MCU, and the mutants and the X-Men are going to be there anyway. So while, yes, it is exciting, adamantium being teased and referenced here in the MCU, I don't know if it's really going to come to much in the larger scheme of things. Now, the last major thing to talk about is the post-credit scene of this movie. Brave New World only had one post-credit scene right at the very, very end, and there's been a lot of hate towards this post-credit scene, and I get it. It is a little bit naff. It is essentially Sam Wilson going to the raft to visit the leader, played by Tim Blake Nelson, who of course is a major antagonist inside of this movie, coming back from the Incredible Hulk all those years ago, and he basically just looks at Sam and says, hey, I've got a big brain, I can see things are coming, and we've got a big threat coming, and they're not necessarily from this universe, and he's basically just teasing to Sam Wilson that there is another big threat coming, and it's not necessarily from this universe, i.e. multiverse exists. Now, this post-credit scene, it's kind of nothing really, because as fans, we know the multiverse is out there, and we know what movies are coming up. We know we're getting Avengers Doomsday, we know we're getting Avengers Secret Wars. So, him kind of revealing this to Sam, while it may be news to Sam and it might be scary for him, for us as the audience members, it doesn't really mean anything. So, this is basically just confirmation. I guess it's maybe telling some people who aren't as plugged in online as probably most of us are, that yeah, there's a big threat coming and Secret Wars is coming and blah, 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 blah. So I guess it is something, it's something to kind of look forward to. And it is nice that, this film is starting to connect the corners of the MCU a little bit more. Like, it's one thing I really loved about Brave New World is it really felt like an old school MCU movie in that way. It was bringing in all these different elements and different strands of the MCU and bringing them together and teasing stuff for the future. And I feel like this post-credit scene does do that. It just wasn't the most exciting thing. Like, I think personally, if I was to do the post-credit scene for this movie, or at least add another one in, like add a mid-credit scene, I would have done a scene of Sam Wilson going to recruit his first new member of the Avengers. I mean, we can kind of assume that, I guess, Joaquin Torres as the Falcon, he's probably going to be a part of it in some way, shape, or form. But it would have been really cool if we had a scene of Sam Wilson going to recruit a member of the squad that we haven't seen yet. Like, let's say, for example, it was Shang-Chi. He goes and visits Shang-Chi and talks to him and says, hey, I need to put together this new team, and you're making waves, you're pretty powerful, come and join me. And I think that would have been a better, more impactful, more exciting post-credit scene than what this was, which is just, oh, hey, did you know these movies are coming up? Yeah, we did, because you told us a year ago. And it just didn't really do much. But overall, exciting times ahead, I think, for the MCU. I mean, even just this year alone, we've got some really exciting looking projects coming up, like Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, and of course, Daredevil. I'm really looking forward to the Marvel slate this year, but I think what Captain America Brave New World has done is it's set a really good start for the MCU this year. I loved the film. I can't wait to see it again. I'm going to go see it again in a few days. And I'm really looking forward to it. And what this movie does set up and provide us as little breadcrumbs for the MCU going forward, I think is exciting. I think it's going to be an interesting time. I think once we kind of get to these Avengers movies and then we can kind of see where the MCU is going from there, could be really cool. So I guess my question now is to you guys. What do you think of Captain America Brave New World? Let me know your thoughts on the movie in the comment section down below. Would you like me to do a full review on the movie? If you would, let me know, and I will do it as my next video. And what do you think of everything we discussed in this video? Are you excited for the future of the MCU? Where do you think these little strands are going? Whatever you think, whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more videos just like this, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me. And I hope to see you guys again next time.